No two characters are ever truly cut from the same cloth. Even though we see many characters share similar traits, go through similar arcs, and reach similar goals, there's always something that makes them unique compared to those who came before. Take Asta from Black Clover, for instance. Asta is a young man with no magic power, in a world filled with magic, but he strives to become the Clover Kingdom's Wizard King. To aid him in this journey, he is chosen by a black grimoire that can summon anti-magic swords, and that possesses a devil inside of it. Immediately, this description may make you think that he's the new incarnation of Naruto from the popular ninja shonen named off the titular character. And yes, there are definitely similarities between the two. But if you couldn't tell from the title and thumbnail of this video, I want to subvert expectations and take a character from a completely different genre and give off a discussion of what makes Asta more similar to one of the original dark fantasy characters of the late 1980s era of manga. Throughout this video, I'm going to first contrast Asta to Guts of the popular Berserk series, before comparing them with the core things that make Guts and Asta the two black swordsmen. And keep in mind, this is pretty much my first time trying to compare two completely different characters, and that I might not completely get my point across. This is all just experimentation, and if you viewers don't think I did a good job, or just have some additional points that I missed to either compare or contrast these two characters, I may try to do an updated version of the video, or a part 2 that expands on what the original video had. First, before we can talk about what truly makes these two characters similar, we have to discuss what parts of them are different. This will go into both the parts of them that are 100% different, and the parts of them that are similar to an extent. Both Guts and Asta are champions of physical strength that were orphaned at birth. Asta and his friend/rival Yuno were left at a church doorstep in Hajj village, where they were cared for by Father Orsi and Sister Lily. Living a more peaceful life, Asta trained his body physically to try and bring out his magical potential, without success. However, his physical strength is great enough to allow him to use the anti-magic swords of the Grimoire of Despair, formerly the Grimoire of the Elven leader Licht. Guts, meanwhile, was born when his mother was hung from a tree. A traveling mercenary band found him and took him in, despite considering him an omen. This whole omen thing came into play after Sis, the group's prostitute who took care of him, died from the plague, and Gambino, the leader of the mercenary band, lost a leg in a skirmish. Forced to train with the sword at age 6, Guts became used to wielding larger swords, and continued to use them and train his body through every bloody conquest he was a part of. Because of their upbringing, Asta is a more social person who levels with people and is always true to himself, not caring about how others see him but caring deeply about his friends and how others treat them. Guts, meanwhile, has a tendency to push people away and to just be a massive dick. due to having been raped by one of Gambino's men, betrayed and nearly murdered by his father figure, and driven away by the men of the mercenary company he had been a part of. The Band of the Hawk did turn out to be a good experience for him, much like how Asta made the Black Bulls his extended family and pushed them past their limits. But unlike Asta, Guts would lose the Band of the Hawk thanks to the betrayal of his friend Griffith. There's also how Asta learned how to properly wield his sword through Fonzel Kruger, a former Diamond Kingdom commander who had taught many of the people under his command to be killers. Fonzel could share a similar role to Gambino through training Asta, but ultimately these two gentlemen are different through Fonzel's relationship with Asta. Fonzel is Asta's friend, and he's willing to help Asta through his worst times, like when he had his arms cursed. Gambino very rarely shows Guts any friendly interactions, instead abusing him for clinging to the grizzled mercenary like a lost puppy. In the end, Guts was forced to kill Gambino to protect himself, leaving him alone in the world until he met the Band of the Hawk. To add to the near-similar experiences, both Guts and Asta have a main love interest that tends to be on the tsundere side, with Guts having Casca and Asta having Noelle. Casca is the only woman in the Band of the Hawk who chose to follow Griffith after he came to help her save herself from being raped by a rich man. At first, she does not get along with Guts, and the two of them constantly butt heads over Guts' position in the Band of the Hawk. But after Guts saves Casca's life, the two become much closer. Guts is able to open up to Casca more about his inner turmoils, including his past trauma, and the two of them are able to come together as a couple. But things take a turn for the worse during the eclipse. Guts is maimed and Casca is raped by Griffith, and this leads to the two of them becoming completely different people. Casca has been reduced to a broken individual who can no longer take care of herself, while Guts became a much harsher and brutal berserker who only sought revenge until he nearly lost the one thing he cares most about. At the moment in the manga, both Guts and Casca are coming around to being close to what they had been before the eclipse, but they both have to handle the scars they received from that business before they can continue where they left off. Noelle, on the other hand, is a noble of the Silva family who has been tormented by her older siblings her entire life for the death of their mother. This torment has left Noelle psychologically unable to control her magic. However, Asta's presence has done wonders to get her back on track, as she has begun to unlock more powerful spells and learn to better control her mana. Because of Asta's encouragement and the efforts he's put into protecting her against tougher opponents like Mars and Veto, Noelle has begun to develop feelings for Asta. However, his inability to recognize other people's feelings towards him and Noelle's inability to be straightforward with her own feelings has left this relationship in limbo. And this is where Asta and Guts are kind of going sideways. Asta not only has Noelle, but he also has Mimosa and Rebecca to contend with, making him an official harem protagonist. If you wanted to count them, he would also have Sally and Sister Lily as part of the harem. Guts does have other women who look up to him, like Farnese and Shiroke, but his relationship with both of them is a bit different. Shiroke's place in Guts' harem seems a bit more forced by her friend Avalera, who teases the way that Shiroke often looks at, thinks about, or interacts with Guts. Farnese does have a crush on Guts, but hasn't progressed it due to being the official caretaker for Casca. None of the girls in Asta's harem have moved forward with their crushes either due to them being nervous and unable to express their feelings, or only because they don't necessarily want to get in the way of one of the others. The last and greatest similarity that's different is their inability to forgive people for some of the crimes they commit. To be specific, I'm referring to Guts' inability to forgive Griffith for sacrificing the Band of the Hawk, and Asta's inability to forgive Patri for murdering the Wizard King. The differences here come from Asta's overall attitude towards Patri after discovering the truth. Patri hates humans for the extermination of the elven race and the siphoning of their magic by the nobles, and when he was resurrected within William Vengeance, he took it upon himself to destroy the Clover Kingdom. But when Asta attempted to free him from the devil's control, he saw the memories of Patri and saw not only the elves being exterminated, but Patri murdering Julius. Like Guts, Asta cannot find himself being able to forgive the elf. But unlike Guts, Asta isn't in the mood for revenge. Instead, Asta tells Patri not to see this halfway through and convinces him to go after the one who was truly responsible, the devil with the new 5-leaf clover grimoire. The ultimate difference between Asta and Guts is that Asta doesn't want anyone to give up when things don't go their way. He believes that even if he can't forgive Patri, Patri could still redeem himself and perhaps come to understand the humans better. But with Guts, the enemies he faces perform far worse crimes, betraying people they love and trust to sacrifice their own humanity. This kind of act is unforgivable, and Guts will stop at nothing to kill the apostles and the God Hand. This kind of act is unforgivable, and Guts will stop at nothing to kill the apostles and the God Hand. This kind of act is unforgivable, and Guts will stop at nothing to kill the apostles and the God Hand. This kind of act is unforgivable, and Guts will stop at nothing to kill the apostles and the God Hand. This kind of act is unforgivable, and Guts will stop at nothing to kill the apostles and the God Hand. This kind of act is unforgivable, and Guts will stop at nothing to kill the apostles and the God Hand. This kind of act is unforgivable, and Guts will stop at nothing to kill the apostles and the God Hand. This kind of act is unforgivable, and Guts will stop at nothing to kill the apostles and the God Hand. This kind of act is unforgivable, and Guts will stop at nothing to kill the apostles and the God Hand. This kind of act is unforgivable, and Guts will stop at nothing to kill the apostles and the God Hand. This kind of act is unforgivable, and Guts will stop at And this brings us to one major difference that Black Clover is sticking to for the time being. Guts is willing to kill people while Asta isn't, and this is likely due to their difference in upbringing. Because Asta was raised by Father Orsine, trained by Fadzel, he's developed more of a moral compass, seeing life as precious, redemption as an option, and his skills to not be used for evil. Guts' upbringing, however, has led him to view his life as a fight for survival, thus he has no qualms killing people who get in his way. And his life spent as a mercenary turned demon slayer further emphasizes his lack of morality, as he has remained more of a neutral force through his entire story, first only killing people because he was told to, before simply killing monsters without regard for the humans that may get in the way. This does change somewhat when he decides to focus on protecting Casca and allowing the other members of his new party to follow him, but he still isn't a paragon of good in a world full of monsters. But this next thing I'm going to say is probably going to get a bit of hate, but it needs to be said. Asta is stronger than Guts. Now before you all point your guns at me over this comment, at least hear me out. Yes, Guts and Asta are incredibly strong for humans in their world, and Guts is able to take a giant mass of iron and use it to cleave horses, humans, and monsters in half. However, what I think makes Asta stronger is that he has the strength not only to kill someone with the swords, but to also hold back his own strength, using it more as a blunt weapon. He's had plenty of opportunities to kill people with the Demon Slayer's sword, and while some could argue that the blades are dull, we know they can cut a person's head off, as the Queen of Witches demonstrated when she had control over Asta, killing Noelle before Vanessa's red thread of fate reversed their fates. It's not just this that makes him stronger, in my opinion. Despite his education being limited as a country bumpkin, Asta has a strong mental fortitude, making him outright resist the devil's attempt at possessing him, and making him attempt to fight off the Queen of Witches' control over him with puppet's blood. Meanwhile, Guts found himself losing control to the Beast of Darkness when first utilizing the Berserker armor. It took the help of Shirake to free him from the control of the Beast and allow him to control his rage while in the Berserker state. Even Naruto, who Asta is normally compared to, requires help from his parents, Yamato, and Killer Bee in order to control the power of the nine-tailed fox Kurama. Now, that's not to say that Asta will be in full control of his anti-magic power forever. There may come a time in the story where he will want nothing more than to kill someone, and perhaps a time when the devil could possess him and make him his vessel. But 200 chapters in at the time of writing this, and Asta is still going strong. This is likely because of the key difference between Asta and Guts. Asta is a static character, while Guts is a dynamic character. Throughout Berserk, Guts has switched roles between hero and anti-hero, being described as either a Byronic hero or a struggling hero, as coined by Soul. Asta, meanwhile, has had little to no growth as a character since the story began. He has been put through scenarios where he nearly gave in to despair, but he always bounces back as himself. It's because of this and the other reasons that Asta could easily be passed off as not being comparable to Guts. Okay, now that I've gone and done the opposite of what the title is talking about, let's talk about the things that make them really stand out as similar characters. I've already established that Guts and Asta are both orphan chads that are the epitome of physical strength in their respective universes. Both have love interests that have a tendency to argue with them that come around to see them for their good qualities, and both have a strong bond of comradeship with their respective groups. They use large swords that no one else can wield effectively because they lack the strength, and their public image compared to their rivals isn't as shiny, either due to their social standing or just because their appearance gives off a thug image. Before I should go on with every other similarity, however, I want to take a quick tangent to talk about another character who wore the title of the Black Swordsman. I imagine that even if you haven't seen his anime, you definitely know his name. I'm of course talking about Kirito from Sword Art Online. Now before you immediately assume I'm going to kick a dead horse, I say slow down and listen. My opinion about SAO is neutral. I like the action and character designs, but I have some issues with the writing. I don't hate the series and don't see the need to kick it down any further. However, I do see the need to talk about him and just how many comparisons to Guts could be thrown his way. Plus, my friend Drago from my gaming channel is a big Kirito fan, and he made some good points as to why he would be worthy of such a title. Going into a complete comparison between Kirito and Guts, both are lone swordsmen who prefer to stay away from parties due to situations where they lost a whole crew. Both have a tough love interest who ends up becoming a damsel for part of the story, and Kirito even uses a sword that had a similar design to Guts' Dragon Slayer. Both have proven they can defeat giant monsters on their own while pushing themselves to the brink of death, and Kirito even lost a hand to save Asuna, like how Guts had maimed himself to try and rescue Casca. However, there is one particular scene in SAO that immediately shatters, at least to me, Kirito's claim to the title of the Black Swordsman. This scene is what makes Kirito seem less like a black swordsman and more like what he really is, a depressed teenager who easily gives up when the going gets tough, only to have a deus ex machina or encouragement from his friends and family to push himself further. It also doesn't help that this happens whenever Asuna is involved either. Asuna's avatar shatters right before his eyes. Oh, just kill me, please. Wait, I'm still barely alive even after seeing a game over screen? Okay, just let me kill you then. Oh, my girlfriend's alive and just still in a coma, and her dad's gonna marry her off to some douchebag? Better just cry my eyes out. Oh, my friend sends me a picture of an avatar that looks like Asuna in another VR game? Better go investigate that. Oh, now I've been impaled to the floor and are being forced to watch as that creep Asuna's dad was gonna marry her off to rips off her clothes and attempts to rape her virtual avatar. Oh, hey, bad guy from the other game. Thanks for getting me out of that inescapable situation. Okay, I think I've gone on long enough. The point I'm trying to get across is that Kirito's will isn't strong enough to carry the title of Black Swordsman, and that he has to rely on things like deus ex machinas in order to succeed against most of his challenges. Fighting the Gleam Eyes by himself, he got a rare skill to use 2 weapons at once. He got stabbed by the villain and died. Somehow he comes back without any explanation. He's pinned to the ground and can't rescue his girlfriend. Turns out he's got Kayaba's old ID and it can give him admin controls. The thing about Guts and Asta is that they don't have to rely on deus ex machinas to win. The only likely point of a deus ex machina, or points I should say, that could be made towards Asta would either be the summoning of the 5-leaf clover grimoire or his Black Asta form. But I would argue that the grimoire only appeared after Asta proved his will was strong enough to support the power it provided. As for the Black Asta form, at that point he had enough anti-magic in his system that someone like the Queen of Witches, who had messed with his body, would have been able to use her power to help him access it. After that, all he needed to do was figure out how to access it himself. And yes, both Asta and Guts can rely on teammates in the heat of the moment, like Asta had in fights against Sally, Beto, and Fauna, but they don't feel like they're being forced into saving the hero from someone that requires divine intervention. Beto was a strong opponent who was going in for the kill, and Asta needed to use a strategy that brought forth minimal damage to himself and his friends. Guts originally put his body through hell to kill apostles, but he has also developed a similar mentality as he has Serpico and Isidro assist him in protecting the town from invading trolls and ogres. By the way, that part actually made me realize there's a huge connection of influence from Black Clover to Berserk, in the fact that both the Wind Spirit Sylph and the Fire Spirit Salamander have been given to important characters like Yuno and Flagoleon, while Isidro and Serpico have weapons blessed by the same spirits. Anyways, both Guts and Asta, and Kirito and Naruto, if you wish to count them for this point, know how to work as a team and to trust other people to have their backs, but they are also willing to go at it alone and put their bodies through hell to achieve their goals. After all, Guts would constantly get his ass kicked against apostles and would even gain a lot of scars from his encounters. Asta would take plenty of beatings when he's the only one left standing, Kirito would solo bosses and nearly die going up against the Gleam Eyes, and Naruto would put himself through hell to protect his friends, which of course included Sasuke. Another major thing about Guts and Asta that Naruto can also be attributed to is the fact that they never give up and their wills are strong. Both Asta and Guts possess an incredible will that is able to stand against things like causality and fate. Guts was branded a sacrifice to Griffith, and Asta was born without magic, meaning that he would have had no real opportunities out in the world to shine. But despite all of that, even when they were at their lowest points, they could have just laid down and accepted their fates, but they didn't. All it took to bring Asta back was acknowledgement from his rival Yuno and the summoning of the 5-leaf clover grimoire. Guts, meanwhile, proved it when, after running from Casca and her deteriorated mental state, he stood his ground against spirits of the astral plane that attempted to drag him into hell with them. From then on, both Asta and Guts have been presented with challenging foes that would have been the end of them, but their indomitable wills shown as they emerged victorious. They always push themselves past their limits to win the fight, though that's also why they take so much damage on an almost regular basis. This is also the central point I argued against Kirito being the Black Swordsman. While he's nearly been on death's door numerous times, the mention of deus ex machinas and flip-flop emotions would make him a terrible Black Swordsman. That's not to say that Guts and Asta, and especially Naruto, have strong wills that never falter. Their wills have indeed been tested, but despite all of that, they pull through in the end. Naruto didn't immediately start off with his unshakable will, but his first large mission does set him up for his ninja way, to never back down and never go back on his word. And I know what you guys are thinking, why have I been bringing Naruto up to this video? Well, despite the fact that I don't think Naruto should be called the Black Swordsman due to some pretty obvious reasons, I do think that some of Naruto's journey also compares to Guts. This brings us to my next point to compare Guts and Asta that Naruto also shares: the beast within. Asta's beast is a devil trapped inside his grimoire. He hasn't interacted with him as much as the others have with their respective beasts, but his presence has been known to Asta since he obtained the ability to summon anti-magic around him, putting him into a state referred to as Black Asta. Naruto and Guts have more literal beasts in the form of the nine-tailed fox Kurama and the Beast of Darkness. Kurama was forced against his will to first attack the Hidden Leaf Village by Madara Uchiha, before he was sealed inside people to keep him from rampaging again. Naruto is the current bearer of Kurama, and for a while the fox only wanted to escape from his prison, not caring about who he hurt or killed to do so. But after being defeated by Naruto and having his chakra extracted, he began to look at Naruto in a different light, especially when it came to how Naruto promised to tackle Kurama's hatred after the war. Now they work together in harmony to protect the ninja world. Guts' Beast of Darkness is a manifestation of his inner rage that is able to feast upon the souls of the apostles that he slays. He's also usually the one that takes center stage whenever Guts enters the Berserker armor state. Guts eventually cages the beast in order to prevent it from hurting his friends in the future, and the Beast of Darkness waits patiently for its next rampage. There are a lot of references in Black Clover in general that could be pointed at Berserk, such as the characters of William Vengeance and Patri paying homage to Griffith, the earlier mentioned Sylph and Salamander spirits, Asta's flying sidekick Nero being a comedic factor in the series, much like Puck is for Berserk, a possible comparison between Lift and Skull Knight, an emphasis on past events and how they may be shaping the future, the nobility having disdain towards those of common birth, and there's even someone jealous of a character because the Griffith character acknowledges them more. Yeah, that last one is a bit creepier. One last connection between the two series is something going on in the Black Clover manga right now. Due to the war between the Clover Kingdom and the resummoned elves, an astral plane of sorts has been opened where it's later revealed that bringing forth all the magic stones, including one possessed by Asta's friend Yuno, could summon forth the devil and give him his own body. This devil has currently demonstrated that his power may in fact be on par with the God Hand, and much like the idea of evil, he had manipulated events to unfold the way he wanted them to. In Berserk, the idea of evil is a being from a lost chapter that reveals that Griffith had been chosen by him to become the fifth angel of the God Hand, and that all the events that had taken place had been by his decree. Back in Black Clover, the devil reveals to Patri that it had been his plan all along to bring about the destruction of the elves to create a five-leaf clover grimoire and claim Licht's body for his own. But because of the actions of Licht and the first Wizard King, his efforts were thwarted. In a last-ditch effort, he possessed another elf and set up a resurrection spell that would bring the elves back in humans that possessed a similar wavelength. From there, the magic would make them work to bring forth humanity's destruction and eventually summon his realm. Once the final stones were in place, the devil revealed his plan to a defeated Patri, and from the elf's despair came another five-leaf grimoire. This devil is a cunning manipulator, much like the God Hand, who convinced Griffith to give in to causality. Patri himself kind of went through this process, becoming a dark elf from his despair of being tricked by the devil. Patri's story tangents from Griffith's, however, when Asta attempts to free him from the darkness, telling him that even though he couldn't forgive Patri for his actions, he wouldn't give up on Patri and asked him to stand against the devil. In this way, Patri was saved from the dark path Griffith chose to take, and even though there's no guarantee of what's to become of him at this moment, he's taking steps towards making things right by standing with Asta. To close off this video, let me just say that no matter what problems both series have, no matter what mistakes or odd choices their anime adaptations have made, I thoroughly enjoy both of these series. I think what makes Guts such a compelling character is that he stands out as a flawed human character. And I think what makes Asta a compelling character is that he's always level with you and inspires you to never give up on yourself and what you believe in. I hope that Miura and Tabata are able to bring both these characters' stories to a satisfying conclusion when they reach the end of their road, with Guts perhaps obtaining the peace and solace with himself and the world he seems to seek, and with Asta obtaining his dream of becoming the Wizard King, and separating the boundaries between royalty and commoners. These two may be cut from different cloth. but they both made a tapestry that shows off a protagonist who never gives up, even in the face of overwhelming adversity. Tapestries of the Black Swordsmen. Alright, it's the end of the video, and there's no more script to read, so I'm just gonna do this all by myself. So, if you guys enjoyed, of course, then be sure to do the usual things that people always ask you to do. You can like the video. If you didn't like, you can dislike it. You can comment below if you want to see more videos like this, have me compare two characters that just seem different based on things like personality, genre, a lot of other things, and try to compare them. You can, maybe tell me to differentiate two characters who are usually called the same, like how people do that with Asta and Naruto, because, I mean, yeah, they are kind of similar, but they aren't. Alright, but otherwise though, if you guys want to read manga and you don't want to spend money, and this is not a paid promotion, by the way, this is just me telling you this because that's how I read Black Clover and Berserk, then you could check out an app called Manga Rock. It's got a lot of manga that's out there nowadays. Some unknown titles, some very big titles. I've used it to read, of course, Black Clover, Berserk, other ones like My Hero Academia, 7 Deadly Sins. Just a lot of stuff I've been checking out, and yeah, it's pretty much free. Well, they do have, of course, a paid subscription service that you can do on the normal app, but then you could also download an additional version of it, which is the definitive edition, which will give you access to all the big manga I just mentioned there. They're not really accessible on the normal Manga Rock app if you're not going to pay, but you can get the definitive edition, which will give you an alternate app that will allow you to do these things. But it's just I mean, it's a good service. I like using it, and that's why I'm just going to give it some free promotion, I guess. And if Manga Rock wants to sponsor me, if I do another video like this, then yeah, I'll go for it. But I'm not gonna like hold my breath out or anything for anything like that because, well, you know, I don't do videos like this a lot. So, anyways, a real quick shout out to some YouTubers who inspired me to do this. First off, Soul, he's actually the guy who got me into Berserk. His video about Guts and why he stands out from other protagonists was like the very first video of his that I watched, and it made me decide to get into a Berserk mood. And then he did another one that compared Guts and Griffith and how they go along the hero's journey and how Griffith fails and Guts succeeds. Those are really good videos. Maybe I'll have them in the end card. If not, maybe they'll pop up in the information tab there when I mention it. And also, if you guys enjoy Black Clover content and also My Hero Academia, I'd recommend Roku no Hero. He does some really good videos. I like watching his content. I especially like his theory that Luck from Black Clover is likely the son of Thor. I really hope that becomes a thing, because then I can use some Marvel-related memes towards that. That'd be fun. But yeah, just shout out to those guys. They're awesome. They talk about anime. You want to check them out, check them out. But anyways, that's going to be it for me. I'm going to stop rambling. If you guys enjoyed, then awesome. Like, comment, share with your friends, definitely. Let them know about this video if they like Black Clover or Berserk. Maybe they'll enjoy it, maybe they won't. We'll see. Anyways, that's all. I'm going to stop. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.